Regular board meeting, Thursday, August 24th, 2017.
Everybody's attention, it's 7 o'clock. This is a duly filed and posted meeting of the Alamo Heights Independent School District Board of Trustees. This is our start of our 108th school year, I believe. Yeah, and the reason I know that is because yesterday, I was telling Kevin, a gentleman came up to me and said his daughter just started Cambridge and she's now the 4th generation going to Alamo Heights schools. And I said, when was the first guy? I mean, that's incredible. I can't imagine there's that many schools even in the country with 4 generations. And the great-grandfather started in, I guess, the first class, 1908. So.
Yeah, 1909.
1909, yeah.
That's right.
And then you informed me, you took the air out of my balloon, which is,
I'm sorry.
We actually have another family who's 4th generation. So that's pretty,
yeah.
that's to me pretty hard to get my arms around.
It is.
4 generations, so that's pretty special. Without further ado, I'd like to hand it over to Kevin and then Dana.
Yeah. So we have some recognitions to do tonight. And Dr. Bashara, you want to start us off?
Yes, we are super excited to announce that our August Spotlight on Excellence Award is being awarded to Kathy Kalenis, who is a teacher assistant in our PPCD, which is, wow, what's the first P?
Preschool program.
Preschool program for children with disabilities. Come on up, Kathy. So Kathy, this is Kathy's 20th year with us in the district, and she was nominated by her classroom teacher, Catherine Dean, who was with us for a handful of years, and Catherine just praises kind of the innate talent that this teacher assistant shows with our most needy children as they enter our school district, our 3-year-olds and our 4-year-olds. She writes that Kathy is thoughtful, she's perceptive, she's always seeking to understand each student, their strengths, their needs, their zone of proximal development. Ms. Kalenis truly teaches and reaches every child as an individual while still holding high expectations for what they're capable of learning. And I see her classroom teacher back there nodding. We're excited that Catherine Bryan is with us as well. What I will say that kind of shines in this nomination is the way that Kathy, Kalenis, a lot going on. The way that Kathy really commits herself to being a positive force, both for students in the classroom, but also for the teachers that she collaborates with and other paraprofessionals that she collaborates with during the day. She's a true model of what we would aspire to be in the support services that we offer for those children. I speak personally because many of my children have gone through the mini meals program that interface with the PPCD program, and she is a true shining star. And I feel so fortunate personally to have been benefit from your many talents.
Well, thank you. But I have said that Dr. Bashara's children are shining stars. We've been so fortunate to have them come through the program.
The Mini Meals program is an amazing partnership with our PPCD program, and it's just amazing at that mutual learning experience that happens for both of those groups of children. And so, Kathy, we are so proud of you. We're so thankful for the way you go above and beyond every day and the way you commit yourself to our youngest children in the district. Thank you for that. Your principal is here tonight. I see Susan back there. Susan, any words to say here?
Sure. We were celebrating Kathy at the special ed meeting one day this week, yesterday, maybe?
Correct.
And she's been with us 21 years. And just in the 4 years that, starting my 4th year, this is her 3rd teacher, but all 3 of them have gushed and gushed about Kathy. And she is truly an advocate. Anytime Kathy talks, you listen, because she's not a super chatty person. When she talks, you know it is something to listen to. I know she's advocated for more materials for 3-year-old mini mules. She's advocated for our cafeteria monitor. She's a very caring person, and I'm sure you've seen her walking around the community because she has a very healthy sense of self.
Very sweet dog. That's right.
So I present this to you, Kathy. We are so very thankful for you.
Our next recognition is for the Leukemia and Lymphoma Society's National Student of the Year, Ella Binkley. Ella? Now, I'm sure Ella and her mom actually can probably attest to how busy she is generally, as well as her cheer coach, who is back here, Ashley. Thanks for being here. Now, the National Leukemia and Lymphoma Society has a big drive and the opportunity for students to serve others by helping raise money to cure cancer. And so Ella, who's going to tell us about her campaign and her team in a second, raised close to $335,000 for the organization to help cure cancer. So let's give a round of applause for that. So tell us briefly about the campaign and the group and just kind of what the different things you did to do that.
So the campaign was 7 weeks long, and it was against other students in San Antonio, and so we just competed in 7 weeks to see who could raise the most amount of money. And I think the runner-up had $50,000 in San Antonio, and then as a collective group, just in San Antonio, we raised like $500,000. And then nationally, I don't really know what like the statistics are on that, but it was a lot of fun. It just took a lot of time.
Yeah, I'll bet. And a good cause.
Yeah.
Now, I understand that you actually had non-Hodgkin's lymphoma when you were a child.
Yes.
So does that impact your
That's
involvement?
why I ran.
Yeah.
I was diagnosed at 2.5 with non-Hodgkin's lymphoblastic lymphoma, and some of the doctors at the beginning, they thought it was child abuse, and so they x-rayed my sister, and then they x-rayed me, and that's when they found out it wasn't child abuse. And so I wanted to kind of raise money to help the research to, make a better impact for other kids going through what I had to go through.
Thanks for doing that. Now, so who's here with you tonight?
My mom and my coach.
You guys, can mom wave as well?
Ella didn't mention a few things, but I really feel like I have to say that Ella's team was comprised of about 21 of her peers here at Alamo Heights. And I'm just going to say the support that Alamo Heights gave to Ella's effort was so heartwarming and so amazing. From the baseball team, Coach Thompson doing that baseball weekend tournament, there were parents that donated all kinds of things. Ella had a huge raffle, and we raised $52,000 just in the raffle from donated items, and that was all from Alamo Heights for the most part. I'm just going to say, being fairly new to Alamo Heights, I was completely, as was our entire family, as well as the society. They were just like, I cannot believe the effort that Alamo Heights put behind what Ella did. And I'm telling you, she could not have done it without y'all. She could not.
Well, thank you.
And I appreciate it so much.
Thank you, Ella.
Thank
Our next recognition is for state track, 5th place, 5A state championships, Tyler McGinnis. Come on down. So, meters, miles, it's hard to, it depends who you're talking to, right? But Tyler placed 5th overall in the 3,200 meter race with a personal best time of 9:25:69. I don't know how far they go, but that's very impressive. When you look at Tyler's times over the year, especially leading into the state championship, you just see him getting faster and faster. And I was talking to Coach and Tyler about so how do you explain that? Just get faster and faster to your fastest. And do you have an explanation for that?
Follow the training.
Yeah.
You got paid.
I guess and talk to these guys. In addition to just kind of being hugely talented with your God-given gifts, you also train a ton. And I think this is it's a recognition of your excellence, but it's also a recognition of your persistence and hard work, just keeping at it. I mean, you run the 3,200, you run the 1,600, you run the 800, and you got first place all over the place. So we're very proud of you. Now, who's here with you tonight?
That's my mom.
Right there, waving at you. Yeah. And you also have your coach, Brian Ricketts. Coach, do you have anything to say about this guy?
Yes, he took a page out of the Gabby Gray training plan and decided he would make it more difficult and run with mono for the second half of the summer. So it made training a little interesting of how hard to push without pushing too hard through the mono. And the 925 was a school record by 13 seconds, which and a 3200 is a lot. 13 seconds is a good bit. So it's a good year.
Yeah, I know we have some runners that around the table, and that's pretty impressive.
That's amazing.
Yeah. I don't cut myself as well.
Nor do we.
Tyler, we're very excited for you, and you're going into your senior year this year. Do you have a sense of what's coming on forward after high school, or is it too early to tell?
No, it's too early to tell.
Can I ask as well, you got a bunch of cross-country meets coming up. Is there one you guys would recommend that kind of a can't miss that would be great to come out there, but just not sure if there's one of those that is?
So the North Side meet, which is September 16th, I've been told is going to be moved to a golf course, which is the best cross-country setting you can get. We're not allowed to run on golf courses typically, but North Side has some sort of deal with a golf course that's closed down. That might be so on the 16th. Once I have the exact location, I'll let you know. That's probably the best one that's in town. We'll have everybody know.
Great.
Well, congratulations on all your success last year, and good luck on all your success this year, Tyler. Congratulations. Next, we have the high school student council president, Kathleen Marshall. Come on down. You can actually do it from there.
Okay, so I'm the new student council president for this year. Sorry, it's all on my phone because there's that. So we just had all our orientations and stuff, and we did super well. We only could sign up the people who did it online because we sold out T-shirts and more people want to sign up. So we're really happy about that. We already started our Make-A-Wish organization and our foundation and stuff. And we're selling all our old T-shirts. We're getting a lot from all different teachers. They're all donating them. And we're selling them for $5 each. And so we're going to start our Make-A-Wish early this year. So we can get a lot of money for that. And, so there's a new student lunch next week that we're all planning. And it's for all the new students in the district so they can meet each other and kind of get to know new people. So they're in the same area. And then, and then we started talking about homecoming already and then setting up everything because that was crazy. So the more we plan it out, the easier it is for us. And that's all we have for right now. So it's going to be a great year.
Thanks. Sounds like a plan.
Go to the next order of business.
Yeah, I'll just on the other real quick, just mention that, and we'll honor Dr. Bashara next month, but there was a luncheon today at San Antonio Business Journal as one of our Women in Leadership Award recipients in San Antonio, which was very nice, but we'll officially do it next month. Just thought I'd say that real quick.
Okay. So this is the time of the meeting where we get into some kind of the nuts and bolts, so you guys are free to stay or leave.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
The next item on the agenda is items for presentation or possible action. 2017-18 budget and tax hearing. Mr. Mike Hager.
So, I'm not following my normal. I made some slides for y'all tonight. So, this sort of goes over the meetings we've had in the past. We'll go into a little more detail of what's going on. And I just want to start off with a little review of things. Fund balance. This is actually my 22nd budget that we're going through. Out of those 27, only 7 we've had in deficits. The largest being $2.5 million in 2009. So from 2010 to 15, our average increase has been $261,000 into fund balance. So we have discount that a little bit, we had a $400,000 rebate from CPS on the solar panels that we put in. So discounting that gets down to about $150,000 on average. And I bring that up because going forward, deficits look like it's what it's going to be going forward unless the state changes the way school finance is. In 2016, 2017, we've added $6 million to fund balance, but over $7 million of that was due to hail damage claims that we received. If we just look at the operational cost, we lost $1.2 million in these last 2 years. With the budget going forward, this next year, we're budgeting a $2.2 million loss. Some of that is due to the way the state has changed some things, and I'll go over that in just a minute. Emma, go ahead. So this gives you the tax rate and property values. So from 2010 to 12, our tax rate was $1.04. In 2012-13 school year, we had a TRE and raised it 2 pennies to $1.06, and it's remained there ever since. And as you can see, our property values have dipped because of the economy in 2011 and 12, and slowly has come back up. And I want to note, in 2016 to 17, you see a fairly good jump. And then 17 to 18, they're fairly level. Chapter 41 is based on two things. One is the prior year values, which sets your wealth level, and the current values, which is your tax collections. So if your current year tax collections don't exceed last year's, or your property values don't increase at a higher rate than your prior years, then you're behind the curve, so to speak, and you get hit with Chapter 41. And that's what we're into this year. Because of our values didn't go up as high as prior years, we're paying a larger part of Chapter 41 out of this year's taxes. Now I want to go over the very top constant dollars. So if you look at 2010, our revenue per ADA was $7,751. This isn't counting Chapter 41, just our operation. If you correct that for inflation, this year we should be spending $87.90 per ADA. But what we're actually spending is $77.78. We're spending $27 more, or we're receiving $27 more in revenue than we did in 2010. That's $1,000 under if we adjusted for inflation.
How big a rate for inflation? How big a rate for inflation? Like 2%, 1.5?
There's a calculation off the internet that I'll just plug in the numbers and it tells me what it should be.
Okay.
So the graph on the left shows you the decrease in state funding since 2010. Remember, we were on ASATAR up until 2016, where you can see it drop. And this is where the state made some changes. If you remember, the state, starting the first year of the biennium, they fund the instructional materials allotment first. So they cut our available school fund by about 40%, and then they fund it to us the next year. So you can see it spike up in 2017 because we received it. 2018 it drops back down because they're not funding us for that first part of the biennium, and we'll pick it up in 2019. Then you can see from the inception of Chapter 41 how it's gone up. And you can, 2006, that's when the legislature made some changes. The wealth level went up, so our recapture went down. But eventually it went straight back on an upward trend. And since its inception through the 2018 school year, we'll spend over $450 million that's been sent back to the state of Texas.
So just so I'm clear, so on the left side you've got how much money the state gives us each year. On the right side you've got how much money we're sending to the state.
That's right. We're going to get $2 million basically from the state this year. Our Yeah, a little less than 2 million, and we're going to send out $37 million to the state.
Another way to say that is our taxpayers have paid $12 million more in taxes in this biennium, and we will keep none of that.
In 2010, we sent 50% of our tax collection to the state. This year, we'll send 57% of our tax collections to the state. And that differential with the state, where they short us from the first to the first year of the biennium to the second, is about $800,000.
So presumably the decreases to state funding, that graph, the 2020 year would be another dip, right? Because 2019
Yes,
shows the
right.
first payment and then
Right.
this
If they
2020.
continue on with that, they will show a dip. So what's included in this year's budget? We're maintaining a $1.06 tax rate, and these are all general fund numbers. We're increasing our investment income because interest rates are slowly climbing up. At one time, we collected $1.2 million. This next year, we're budgeting $400,000. So $800,000 in revenue would help quite a bit.
Mike, it was down to like 30,000 at one time.
Oh, yeah.
When it got
Back
to the interest
2
rate
years
so low.
ago, it was pretty low, 50,000 or something. This budget includes a 1% pay raise off the midpoint, off all schedules for employees. The district contribution, we're increasing that for a total cost of $115,000. And then we have new positions due to enrollment or program growth, and that's $450,000. $350,000. Sorry.
And Mike, how much is that due to enrollment still trending up, and how much is it we're just offering more programs?
Well, it's not really offering more programs. It's the growth in strings, in some athletic periods. So it's really the growth of programs that are already in place. There are no new programs.
About half of it is enrollment growth in the way it shakes out in the schedule. So a certain number of kids in a grade level, you have to add a teacher. At the secondary level, if you need an extra section of English 3 or whatever, about half of that is there. The other is increase in strings, increase in band, and then we added stipends for 2 coaches, and due to the number of kids that are in the program. So those are the increases that we had there, we shared all of that back in April and May when we did our staffing stuff with you. But anyway, those folks have already been hired and everything, and are at work, fortunately. And by the way, I would say we hit our staffing just about perfect. We're always you're never sure, and we'll still anticipate another 100 students or so enroll in the next month. And so we, you never know until they're here, but we were off by 3 students on our first day enrollment, which, that's pretty good.
Amazing.
Now,
That's
about between now and October 1st is where we look to see, that's the big one, is to see kind of where we trend up. But I don't, as of now, we don't think we're going to have to add anybody. But anyway, and we also, by the way, as we go through to the staffing, we cut positions too. And so, when we were here in May, we went through wherever we could cut, because sometimes grade level will go down, or there's fewer sections of whatever.
Do you all is there another slide on health insurance? Are we going to go through that? Or?
We'll cover that a little later.
Okay, sure. I didn't know if it was, okay.
Yeah. And this just gives you the breakdown of revenues and expenditure for 2018 budget. It's like I had said before, it's $2.2 million in a deficit position. The local revenue is up due to tax collections by about $5 million. The recapture is up a little over $4 million. I think there's $200,000 or $300,000 off of tax collections that we gained.
And y'all know that comes from your 6 golden pennies. So the last 6 pennies on your $1.06, right? So if you're at $1, you're not keeping any of that. But the 6 pennies, you get to keep at least the property value increase revenue off of that piece of it.
And then just to mention the debt service, we are asking for a ½ cent increase to 14 cents. And that's due to issuing the new bond that we just passed.
And that's not in these, right?
That's not in these.
But it's
No.
another.
This is only general fund numbers.
Right. But so it'd be another $1 million of revenue, I think, and then, but $1 million of
Yes.
debt service expense.
Yes.
Okay.
Uh-huh.
And in terms of the deficit, just myself having bounced it off, trying to figure out what's going on out there, is what's the sense you guys get on others who are, I'm assuming almost everybody's in the position we are, going to have to either dip into.
There's a lot of districts that are dipping into fund balance because of the legislature's lack of action. And I think, as you look at the next 2 years, we're not getting, the Legislative Budget Board shows that we get $0 over the next 2 years. We'll get a little bit on those 6 pennies, but the legislature doesn't factor that in. So they have us as 0. We show that we get $21 over that time. But I think that, districts are hurting all over the place. Fortunately, you saw on the slide over there when we used to be on ASETAR, which was additional state aid for tax reduction. So just as a reminder, back in 2006, when the legislature cut property taxes from a maximum of $1.50 to $1, so they were cut by a third, right? Where it's really a 50% cut, right? Is that correct? It's cut by a third. So from $1.50 to $1, the state said they guaranteed you wouldn't lose any revenue. And so they had what was called additional state aid for tax reduction. So they plugged that hole for 2 sessions, basically, until 2011, when they cut $5.4 billion out of public education. They said they were going to cut ASETAR for a lot of districts. So we were one of those that were cut pretty heavily in 2011. That's when we went through the big budget advisory committee and made cuts of 29 positions in the district and froze salaries and raised class sizes and cut a whole bunch of other things that were out there. And that's when we decided to go out for a tax ratification election for the 2 golden pennies to help offset that hit. And so we have come off of additional state aid for tax reduction. We don't get any ASETAR funding anymore. There are some districts in the state that get a huge amount of money from that still, but it goes away completely. The legislature decided to vote that out. So there are some districts in the state where literally half or more of their funding is in ASETAR. And so they've given them some grants that'll help offset a little bit of that for 2 years, but then that's it. And a lot of those districts, as you know, are small districts, or a lot of them are rural districts. They tend to have maybe a nuclear power plant or oil, but they tend to be very large geographically. And there's a lot of concern that a number of those are actually going to have to close their doors because they just don't have the funding to do it. But there are a lot of districts out there that are having to adjust over this biennium. Frankly, most everybody's down since 2011. We were, I'll say this too, when they made the cuts in 2011, we were cut more than 95% of the districts in the state. Okay? When they restored some of the funding in 2013, we got less than 95% of the districts in the state. So we were on the worst 5% of both sessions of that. When you go into this session, we got 0. And so that's the frustration that I know you have and that we all have, is that as we're paying more, we're just sending that to Austin and we're keeping less. We have less by $1,000 a child. I mean, think about that in a classroom, $1,000 per child adjusted for inflation. But that's a real hit, right? I mean, that's a lot of money in this district. And so, that's where Mike is to be commended for, and this board, and our employees, frankly, for a lot of the bad hits were hits that adults took, which is appropriate, and that's the way it should be. But they've taken hits along the way, and so we're fortunate to have that. But that people have done that, and Bonnie, I remember, was on the budget advisory committee, and we met for probably 3 months or something, and we had community members and parents and staff, and not a single complaint when we went through that. Everybody was willing to roll up their sleeves and do what they could to help out. And but now we're getting into a different place, and something's going to have to change over the long haul. Fortunately, we've never been positioned better in terms of our fund balance, and that's because we've been frugal and we've done smart things along the way. So we're not in emergency, as of like there's nothing imminent or terrible going on, but it's just not sustainable over the long haul. And so ultimately, we're going to have to have, my preference is that we get help from the legislature. And it would be nice if they let us keep a portion of what we're sending out. And if you think about just the $12 million more we're going to send out these 2 years, just a fraction of that would go a really long way to helping this school district, and that's pretty frustrating. So we got no help on the Senate side for sure as this went through the legislative process, and that was difficult.
What's the commission that's been put in place? What is the hope that they're supposed to be looking at school finance? But what is the end? What's the end date for that? And are they have any responsibility to report? I mean, is there results they're expected to, or is it just to talk about it?
So the commission will go. Typically, the way a commission works, it's an interim study. There'll be a commission of about 15 people. And they'll go around and have public hearings and invited testimony. My experience in the past has been that they meet a lot and they have a lot of testimony. I've never seen a commission on school finance actually make a difference. I mean, right now in current law, there's supposed to be a cost of education index. They don't have that. They don't do it, so we don't know what it. For instance, we live in a very expensive place to be compared to much of the state. Cost of education index would really help Alamo Heights, but that doesn't exist. We haven't done that. We haven't updated those numbers in 30
It's there,
years.
just haven't been updated in 30 years.
30 years, 1980 something. The last time it was updated. It's supposed to happen every time. So we had a commission on school finance maybe 2 sessions ago or something like that, and nothing resulted from that. So. To me, when you do a commission, it's because you want to delay what you're doing. And I think it was partially just to delay the discussion on school finance because it's a difficult topic. And it is a complicated topic. It's not an easy topic, but it is an important one.
And if you can go back to the board book. I do have, I'm reluctant to pass this one out because I found a mistake. And I added, we're required to post on our internet a proposed budget with the first 3 columns. I've added the last column as far as expenditure per pupil for the 2017 school year. Just know where it says student support about halfway down. It's got 5.3 million. That's really 1.3 million overstated. It has food service in it, and it shouldn't be in there. So that's a correction that I'll need to make.
So the 5.8 is student support and food service.
Right. This is only supposed to be general fund and debt service. Food service is a different fund. So when I told my columns, I just added that inclusion. It shouldn't be in there. So if you go to the next one for me, please. Okay, so this is the budget that you would adopt. The general fund, special revenue fund, which is food service, and then the debt service fund. The tax rate will be at $1.20 overall, and it will show a deficit of $2.2 million.
And we are getting a bump on federal, but obviously a small part of the budget, but it's.
Yeah, but federal is really three different programs. One is ROTC, we get refunded, or we get a partial payment from the Army for our ROTC staff members. Then we have the SHARS program and the MAC program, which are for special ed students that are on Medicaid programs. And so those numbers, those are the only thing that goes in federal. Your Title I, Idea B, those are separate and don't need to be adopted by the board, since those are federal grants given to us.
And I know we've talked through this a bunch of different times in committee meetings, but so deficit this year, likely deficit the school year after that.
Yes.
And then we'll see what the state does to help us out, which I'm never optimistic about, what comes out of the governing body. So then I know we've discussed like draconian measures we can take. We kind of have those in the bag. We don't want to bring them out, but if we have to, we're prepared with a path.
So remember, your deficit next year will be smaller,
right?
Because of the way the instructional materials works, and then mainly this year because you have your Chapter 41 are paying against last year's.
As long as our property values increase at a higher rate, or at the same rate.
So that's one thing. The other is you're positioned better than you have been in the future or in the past. But the other part of this is that there are things you can do that we've even talked through the budget advisory committee, like eliminating conference periods, about raising class size and things like that that we really don't want to do. But you can do them, and you can balance your budget. And your teacher morale will go down, and your ability to collaborate, and all of those things, all the work we do and engage, not that it goes away, but it just becomes more difficult, harder to do. But that is something and it's also a great recruiting tool for us, because we're one of the few that are able to give a second conference period at the secondary level, or go a little below class size in kinder through third grade. And so I think our community likes that. I think our kids like that. I know our teachers do as well. It just makes it for a nicer environment. So you can always do that. 90% of your budget is salary and benefits. And the two biggest cost drivers on that are teacher salary and class size. Those are really your two biggest cost drivers. And so, one of the frustrations is that you can't, is those are your cost drivers. You're so fixed on those. And the other part of your budget is your fixed costs pretty much. It's utilities, it's instructional supplies. There's not a lot of room to cut. As Bonnie will remember, and those of you who are on the budget advisory committee back then, there were not any easy options, and that was before we made cuts. So the next round of cuts gets much more difficult, I think. But you can get there, and you can at some point, if the legislature doesn't step up and they don't allow us to have some more local discretion in what we have, then you're going to have to do it. Bottom line. Now, I would suggest that this is a 2 or 3 session fix in school finance. But just for example, in House Bill 21, they would have allowed for Chapter 41 districts like Alamo Heights to get transportation funding. So currently in the formulas, if you're a property wealthy district, you don't get any funding for transportation. So just that alone would add $600,000 or $700,000 to our budget if we just got transportation funding like everybody else does. But we don't. So it's just things like that. That was in there. That would have been a permanent fix to the formula that would have helped us. So if this commission if anything good comes out of it, hopefully it's addressing things like that that really make a difference and allow us to keep a little bit more of our local revenue local.
Yeah, and really I just want to make, and we've talked about it, so I'm basically just reiterating it.
Yeah.
But it's one of those things where there's no head in the sand. Like we know what we're doing, running into our fund balance. We have a healthy fund balance. We're going to run into it, and we might run into it again the school year after.
Yep.
But we've got steps that we can take to come out of that.
Yep, that's right.
And
Go ahead, Ron.
I was just going to say, I think it's tagging on to that. If we adopt this deficit and we'll end up with another deficit, let's assume the legislature does nothing.
Yeah.
I think that's a pretty fair assumption. We're not running out of our flexibility so that 2 years from now we're at the draconian cuts. We
Right.
still have some flexibility
Oh, yeah.
to bring this crash into as soft a landing as
That's
you
right.
can. Okay.
No, I think that's important to say. I also do think I'm actually more optimistic. And the reason why is because the economy going into this legislative session was particularly difficult with oil prices having dropped so badly, and so I think that that had a big impact on this session. Now it's more than just that. So, my hope is that I've been in legislative sessions where you've had difficult ones, probably no more difficult than 2011 in terms of the funding because we really got cut big time. But I'll go back to even in the early 2000s, 2003, 2005, when we were adopting here $1 million deficit and realized that, but then eventually came out of it because of changes that occurred either in the economy or in the funding formulas or whatever. And so here's what I think. I don't think there's going to be any big windfall that saves the day. But I also don't, my recommendation would always be, and y'all know this because we've talked about this many times, but is that you don't overreact when times are bad and you don't overreact when times are good. Because you don't want to, in a year of surplus, you don't want to say, God, let's go and buy all these things or whatever, because there will be bad days ahead. And that's why you're in such a good position as you are today, is because you've been very wise in your decisions in the past.
Yeah, that's why I think this budget, I think, is good balance. It weighs out the problem that the cold reality of public school finance, and it's hitting us now with some of the things we want to do to address the competitiveness in the margin. That we have great people, and 1%, we'd all like to do more, but just given what we've gone through it's certainly better than a freeze. I think with benefits things we'll go through, that's going to be helpful as well. But it is a balance between those two, and I think it's a really prudent budget you guys put together, and one that gives us the flexibility Ryan talked about. That we're not blowing it all this year, just have to wonder what happens next year. So.
Yeah.
And I like what, going back all the way to that budget advisory committee. I mean, that group considered some really big changes and didn't make them when we were looking at $5.5 million cuts.
Right.
So we're not there yet. To make that group said, let's not do that yet. And so I think it makes sense to be a little bit cautious about making those really, really big cuts and talking about those right now.
Yeah.
To try and end on a somewhat optimistic note, in the legislature, are there, and you don't put names on the record, are there voices out there of reason that may be gaining steam that 2 years, 4 years down the road, someone in the legislature is going to recognize the reality?
You said you wanted to end on an optimistic note.
Strike that question.
We lost one that I was really excited about.
No need.
I'm not sure.
So we need to find candidates, you're saying?
We need some candidates.
Yeah. It's it's going to be tough sledding, I think, in a lot of ways. But again, had we made the cuts, for instance, when we went through the budget advisory committee, we wouldn't have been the best small district in Texas this year.
Yeah.
Because a lot of the things that we were able to do, we wouldn't have been able to do. And we're in a better fund balance position today than we were even then. And so that's where I think John is right, that it's prudent. It's very minimal. but it's not. You can be irresponsible by cutting, and you can be irresponsible by spending. And I don't think this does either. I think it's responsible on both sides. But it's frustrating that you're in this position.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'd like to, do have a motion to consider the adoption of the, so we're next to 2017-2018 budget as presented.
So moved.
Second?
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. The next item is C, consideration of the 2017 tax rate.
We're asking for $1.20 overall, $1.06 for M&O, and 14 cents for INS. In the motion, you have to stipulate each one individually and not as a total.
Okay.
And before you do that, let me just say again, you have overall, I believe, still the lowest tax rate in Bexar County. And even with the passage of the bond and the increase in INS that will ultimately come from that, I believe you still are going to have the lowest overall tax rate. Of course, people set those annually, but you're positioned to be the lowest of all those. So, which is a good thing. And something to know.
If we're running 14 cents on the debt service, what were we there before? What were we before?
13.
13.
So these are two separate motions?
No, it can be the same motion, you just have to itemize each one.
Gotcha, okay. Does somebody want to do the motion, or I'll do it?
I'll give it a go. You want to give it a go?
Sure, go ahead.
Go. So I'll move that we accept the ordinance levying the ad valorem tax rate at $1.06 for the general fund and a 14-cent rate for the debt service fund.
Any second? Second. All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Section D, consideration of 2017-18 employee compensation and benefits.
So in the budget, we have a 1% raise off the midpoint for pay on all the pay schedules. For teachers, that would be $550 based on a 187-day contract. All others would be based off the schedule they're on by the number of days that they work. And overall, it's about a $325,000 total package.
And are you going to do benefits as well?
I'm sorry, that's right. So we were working on this week, so.
And remember that in our meeting last week, we gave you a bunch of insurance options and talked through those with y'all, and at your request, went back and modified a couple of things on this. And why don't you take them through the change that we made, Mike?
Sure. So basically what we have done, I'll just go through, starting on the left-hand column. That gives you how many employees are in each plan, whether it's the high deductible select or two, and then the categories below that. The next column is the new rates, and then the third column is what we are proposing the district pays or contributes to that, and then the employee contribution. And then the column increase monthly to district is really $30 to the high deductible and $10 to the other plans. And then you can see the employee, how much their increase would be. And the final column is the total increase of the total increase of our increase of that $30 or $10 per month over a 12-month period. So it's another $114,000.
It's not just the increase, though, it's our total cost.
No, this is just the increase.
So what is that a percentage of the total? What's the growth?
It's about 1%. This will be a total we pay out of about $1.2 million in health contributions.
And do our employees that are getting some of these plans are really increasing? Do they have the option to go down to a lower
They do.
cost plan still?
They do.
Okay, all right.
But they only have a week to do it. It starts September 1, and our providers have come in and been working with people individually
Okay.
to do their plans. Our goal would be to get this out as quickly as possible. We don't anticipate a big change.
No, because
of the
they had
rates.
signed up not knowing that we were adding to the contribution. So if they had picked a higher plan, I don't know that they would change.
So they
That'd be great.
already knew these
Okay.
costs, the cost.
They
of
already knew
these.
the cost and,
Okay.
and what the district was paying last year as far as
Yeah.
contribution
Okay.
goes.
Are you sure? That sounds, I think it's a 10% increase, isn't it? If it's 1.1, we're going.
Yes, you're right,
Okay.
10%.
That would make sense because we're trying to.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah.
And then I was curious on the actual draw. I know that it looks like roughly 40% of the employees who are on our plans are on the high deductible
Right.
employed. And that one's actually decreasing the amount they contribute. What's the thinking behind that? Was that just to line
I
everybody up?
think we looked at just, there's a couple of different thoughts on that. One was just to make all the plans, what we contributed to employees, the same across the board. And TRS, we believe, is going to try to force everybody to the high deductible plan. And that may happen in the next session. They tried to do that this session.
If you're on a high deductible plan, you can set up an HSA. And so if you're an individual employee on that plan, you're going to be paying $5 a month. So your $20 savings, because they were paying $25, could go into that HSA. So that because the high deductible is you could do that. They don't have to, but it would be equivalent to the other plans. And there was a disincentive to do the HD1 under the old thing because you weren't getting as much money contributed by the district. So we just wanted to have parity from each of the three plans. But I think everything we've heard is that TRS is trying to drive people to HD1. And so it's going to be interesting to see how people signed up this time around because the Active Care 2 went up so much that it's clearly they're trying to force people over.
Yeah, it was already high, which I'm surprised
Yeah.
that many people, 20% or so, were on it. Man,
Yeah.
Yeah,
It is
I
really high.
agree.
Yeah.
I'm surprised.
yeah, I would think everybody starts flooding into the.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would.
It really depends on, if they have medical issues and they want to stay where they are.
Yeah. And then just some people can't get over that.
Yeah, if you're a healthy person, HD1, really, you ought to move to that and take the savings and put that in an HSA account.
Yeah,
Right.
But it's just hard for people to get their mind around that.
yeah.
Okay, any further discussions?
Well, I just want to say this too. It was in the news yesterday, the day before, that Judson raised their salaries 2% across the board, funded entirely out of their fund balance. I mean, none of it out of their tax revenues or anything like that, just out of money in the bank. So, I mean, it's the right thing to do for our teachers. We just got to figure out how to get the state to change things.
Yeah.
And thank y'all for the research on comparing us. That was
Mhm.
that was very
Yeah.
helpful.
Yeah.
Well, we compare really well in most areas. That's the one we don't,
Yeah.
on health insurance. And I think that's going to be a continuing problem, frankly.
Yeah, it's just tough to compete with the large districts.
It is.
In the economies. Yeah.
And so y'all know this, but it's just so the other people in the room know. There's something like 800 districts that are on TRS Active Care Insurance, and we contribute higher than most of those districts do to our employees. But the premiums are outrageously expensive, right? So just to, people are spending $1,600 a month to have a family on their insurance. That's just ridiculous. So we compete really well with those 800 districts statewide. The problem is we don't compete with those 800 districts. We compete with Northeast and Northside and San Antonio and Judson, all of which are not in TRS, and they have lower rates, and so their employees are paying significantly less on the insurance side. So over time, there was a bill this session that would have allowed us to get out of TRS. It did not pass. They're going to do a study on it to see what the impact would be if people get out. Because when you got into TRS, and I've been here less than a month, when you didn't have TRS. And we were being insured with Pacific Care. That was the only insurance company that bid on us. We go out for bid, only had one bid. And then within the first month of my being here, we got a letter from Pacific Care saying we're canceling your policy. And you have 30 days. So we went out with Aetna, Humana, and they came in, and fortunately they saved the day, but districts were getting dropped by health insurance all over the place. And that's when the state came up with TRS Active Care. And what's happened over time is the state's still donating the same amount of money, contributing the same amount every month to 75. We were doing 125. Now our portion's up to 3.
Well, it's the total.
It's the total. Okay.
346 to 376.
We've increased our portion of that significantly, not as much as we like, but significantly. But you couldn't get out once you got into TRS, and so nobody can get out of it, even if they want to. Now your little districts, they don't want to get out, even though it's really expensive, because nobody wants to carry them. And so that's kind of where they came with this. And so there's just a lot of unknowns right now, and I think we're going to have to see what happens over the next couple of years and what happens with TRS Active Care. TRS Care is health insurance for retired teachers, and that really is expensive for them from when they retire to when they turn 62 and get onto Medicare, right? And so then that goes down. And the state did put some money into that to increase that, because their premiums also went way up. And I think they put $60 million or something like that into TRS Care. They're both of those insurances are having a hard go of it.
Okay. If there's no other discussion, do I have a motion to approve the 2017-18 employee compensations and benefits as presented?
I got it.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Mike, thank you and your team for, I know there's hundreds of hours that go into this, and you guys got your fingers on the pulse like nobody. Thank you.
The most frugal man in the world.
No, it was the most fiscally responsible.
Fiscally responsible, thank you. That's right. Stay frugal, my friend.
Too. Yeah,
That's
that
right.
too.
Okay, next up is the consideration of the 2017-18 Student Code of Conduct and Student Handbook. Dr. Frank Alfaro.
Thank you, Dr. Brown, Mr. Tippett, and members of the board. What I included in the board book were the red lines for the Student Code of Conduct and the Student Handbook. Just a quick review.
We didn't get red lines.
You didn't get red lines?
No.
All right, well, there you have it. Let me walk you through what the differences were, because they're really, so essentially, number one, I apologize for that. Number two, essentially what the red lines were any cleanup that TASB, our policy service gives us, that are really just cleanup in language based on their legal work and things like that. And it also, so that's what most of the red lines were. There were some changes based on Davis law, which were the most substantive differences you saw. So any place that talked about bullying, that reflected the changes, and I'll quickly review what the major parts of that were. So essentially there were three big changes that the law requires for everybody. The first is that they require an anonymous reporting mechanism for students to report bullying or any mistreatment like that. They also require counseling services to be available in situations like that. And the third thing that the law requires is that you notify parents of both the alleged perpetrators as well as the victims within 3 days. So that's what would have been redlined. You would have noticed that. The important thing to note is that in our mistreatment flow charts that came out of our Heights last year, we already had those three things covered. So we already have an anonymous way to report things that already exists.
That's has for 10 years.
Yeah, we've had it for a while. The second thing is that our flow chart already mentioned counseling services, so that was already kind of on our radar. And the third thing is that we already had a step where we would notify parents. The difference is we didn't say within 3 days, and the law says within 3 days. So we'll continue to follow our flow chart. We'll just make sure it gets done within 3 business days. That's essentially the substantive changes from David's law. Any questions about that or the code of conduct?
Well, just remind me about that extracurricular thing.
Yeah, I was just curious. We went to the Region 20 overview of the session, and there were quite a few changes. And I'm just wondering when those are going to be incorporated into this. Because some of them, right, I believe some of them, more than just the David's Law, kind of overlapped into the handbook.
Yeah, so I'll get to the handbook in a second. So one of the distinctions I wanted to make for the group as well was that the Code of Conduct houses essentially the legislation that deals with student discipline. And so that's why what's shorter is than in the handbook. So the Code of Conduct is all those things you can get in trouble for and the things that you can go to DEP, get expelled for, ISS. The other stipulations that not necessarily that came with David's Law was that they gave districts additional ability to expel kids as well as send them to the AEP. But those aren't necessarily like requirements that districts have to have. They just kind of expanded your power to do those things when it comes to bullying situations. So those are also in the Code of Conduct.
I think that, on your point, they said there's like 250 education bills passed, but how are, like, there's several of them here, you guys must be way ahead of the curve because you haven't got guidance yet on.
Yeah, so the distinction I would make is that everything that was passed that affects Code of Conduct has been given to us as guidance by TASB, and it's reflected. And so, in other words, most of those bills don't impact the Code of Conduct.
And David's Law is effective September 1st. That's the other, one of the other distinctions.
Okay.
Right, so all of the stuff in David's Law is reflected in the Code of Conduct already. Yeah.
But there's also, to also clarify, is the process is that the legislature passes a law. Sometimes it can take months for that to get turned into policy.
Right.
Especially when you just have a special session that ends, the week before school starts. And so that lawyers have to take that, they have to read through. A lot of times the legislature doesn't even know what they've passed. I mean, literally, they don't, because there's so many amendments to the bills and all this that get put in. So lawyers pore over that, and then they start translating that into policy. And then they give us those, that's why we get all those updates in board policy. Occasionally, they will say, we need you to do an addendum on your code of conduct. And that comes after the fact. But it's not actually possible to translate all those laws into policy in the amount of time that they sometimes give you. But the TASB goes in and they'll prioritize that, and they'll start getting the big stuff taken care of. And I think David's Law would be one of the more significant ones, and we were already doing all of those things, but it changes the language that's in the Code of Conduct. So I don't know, and then typically when they do that, of course, in your updates, they're giving us some guidance and asking us questions on how you want your local policy to reflect that as well.
So the guidance so far we've got from TASB is that the majority of the legislative changes that affect policy are going to come in an October update.
Okay.
So we'll get a pretty big chunk here in a couple of months from that.
But if something else was out there that we needed to, we could do an amendment to this midstream for some reason.
We've done that once or twice.
But I did
before.
specifically call them to say,
Hey, we're doing this.
they're like, no, that everything they've vetted that's going to affect the Code of Conduct came through this last time. At least that when I called in August. Yeah.
Okay.
Because I wanted to make sure. Because so the other thing to note is that the change that came through David's Law, we actually went over with the principals and the APs, and so we wanted to really make sure. So that's kind of why I called. I was like, I want to make sure that there's nothing else coming down the pipe. So that's the Code of Conduct. Now, the other thing important to note for anybody interested is that the student handbook is the place where everything else goes. And so technically, statute doesn't require us to have a handbook, but statute does say you must notify people about X, Y, and Z. And so essentially what folks do is they just shove it all into the handbook. So that's why you see it's a lot longer. And so I'd actually love to send you the red lines eventually. I mean, anyway. Well, because the handbook has a lot of the language cleanup.
Yeah.
I would like that.
Since we're going to review stuff in October, I mean, that'd be an easy time.
Yeah.
For us to-
Yeah.
But in terms of the language cleanup, the handbook is really where you see a lot of differences, because there'll be some court case somewhere, and they find out, it's better to say it this way or that way. And so there's more just language changes and cleanup in the handbook. But for our purposes locally, we've also included in the handbook as appendix like 2 and 3 is the revised extracurricular code, which you guys remember we revised last year. Very collaborative process, lots of input from lots of different people, and we presented that to the trustees in April, right, in April. And so after we presented to you guys, we also sent it out to the parents at that time, remember? We posted it on the website with the explanation of the process, and so everybody has seen it. But going forward, our decision was to say, just to make sure that everybody knows where everything is, it's all packed into the student in the handbook, and it will be there henceforward. So that's the code is in there, so you see that in its entirety, and also the revised academic integrity procedures and guidelines. So that's now part of our handbook, and it'll be our ongoing part of our handbook. So in addition to that, we presented to you guys those two parts to you all in April, sent it out to parents. We've met with coaches and sponsors. We gave them talking points to make sure that they go over certain parts of the handbook with the students. Some of you might have already seen the coaches go over that, this part. And then we're also in the process of making a video for parents that we'll push out through Monday Mail to hit the highlights from the parents' perspective about the extracurricular code revisions.
It's a video, you said?
Yeah.
Okay.
That's under development.
Frank, this is the technicality, but we refer to the SHAC committee quite a bit in here. Is there somewhere that we define that our version of SHAC is the DEAC?
Not explicitly in the handbook.
But SHAC is a state term, right? The state
That's
calls
correct.
it that. That's why it's referred to in here
Right.
as that.
Yeah, that's
I don't know. And just for clarity, it might be helpful for people to know that we have that's our SHAC
Okay.
somewhere.
In the
I thought we had that when we combined DEAC with SHAC and technology, that we took action to define that as the place that would be housed. Is that not accurate?
Right, but it's not stated in the handbook.
The term SHAC is all through here, and so if
Now,
you're
so
reading
just
this,
it's important for us to continue using the term SHAC
Because
it's
the
a
state-
statutory required group.
okay.
So we still have to use the term SHAC. When I meet with the DEAC and I go over stuff, I always remind them, remember, you guys are functioning as the SHAC. These are things that we're statutorily required to
Right.
cover.
Right.
So that term is important to keep.
Okay.
But I think what I'm hearing from you is that we need to make sure that folks know that that's the same thing as this other thing as well.
Yeah, we do, because there was some misunderstanding about what the DEAC was last year, in the midst of all our student code. Parents are very interested, so I think it's just important just to have a clarification. in the
And maybe we
handbook.
just need to go back to calling it SHAC, but then that eliminates, that confuses with the
The
technology
EIC,
piece. So, anyway, something to put on the radar to clear up, just communications.
So, this is something that we need your consideration to approve.
So my recommendation would be that you approve it with the change of adding in that we put SHAC in the handbook to include, to be included in the
Definitions or
DEAC and
something.
the definition of DEAC, and we can add a sentence in there that just clarifies that that's the case. Would that work?
That's probably good.
Because it has its own
It has a
glossary.
glossary.
Right,
Yeah.
there's that.
It's
Yeah.
very easy to do. Is that okay to do, Frank?
Yes, sir.
All right.
Terry, you want to do this one? this motion. You got stomped on last time.
I wouldn't call it stomping.
No, I wouldn't either, because that's gonna start something.
Yeah, Emma gave Perry credit anyway.
Wait, just really quick, I did have a quick question. The freedom from bullying policy, that's an appendix in here. Frank, that reflects all of the David's Law updates, but also that reflects like the procedures that we talked about last year in that April meeting.
No, yeah, so this is I'm glad you asked that. So because we're waiting for updates in policy in October, right now we can only insert our current bullying policy. But when we get our October bullying policy, like what is it, FFI or whatever it is?
Oh, good point.
It's so FFI will change, but right now we have to put in our old FFI because that's the only one that exists. We don't have a new FFI yet.
And so that's one where it references the year 2012, I believe.
Yeah.
Okay. So when we get the updated one, then it'll reflect.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
I was just curious about
Right.
those.
So the policy's not made yet, but all of the effective actions that the policy will require be in the code of conduct, that's the code of conduct. If that makes sense. Great question.
It's a lot.
Yeah.
Okay, any other questions or discussion? Do you have a motion to approve the 2017-18 Student Code of Conduct and Student Handbook with the additional change of referencing that SHAC is incorporated to DEAC?
So moved.
Do you have a second?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? The motion carries. Okay, thank you, Frank.
Thank you.
Next up is number 4, consent agenda. The board can review the items we put under there for this month. These are items that are considered routine by the board and have been reviewed in prior meetings, and we'll enact them in one motion. If there's any you guys want to pull out to discuss, please let me know now. While you're doing that, I'll just like to point out in terms of donations, we're grateful for about $29,000 of donations this month.
Oh,
For the school.
okay. I'd like to pull out F, the relations with parent organizations.
Oh, yeah, you want to discuss that?
Well, I just wanted to, that is new and that's significant, I believe. Is that, I was just curious, is that a state mandated policy? It was in our board book, it's kind of toward the
It's
end.
an administrative regulation.
Uh-huh.
So
Is that a local or?
it's done by administrators. So it's a regulation, it's not policy.
Uh-huh.
And it relates to creating a booster club,
Right.
basically. Correct, Frank?
That's
You wanna-
correct.
yeah,
So if you remember,
the
the theater arts
theater group.
Oh, right,
wants
that's
to
right.
create a parent booster club for the student group of theater arts. And so in order to facilitate that, we were looking for so how do they do that? What do the rules need to follow, et cetera? And so since we didn't have internal administrative regulations for Booster Club, we consulted TASB. They gave us a draft and we went back and forth to write a draft to give guidance to that new club that's being created.
So are all existing clubs going to have to abide by that? Because that is significant and going to be very new for some of our organizations.
Right, we're going to talk through that.
Okay, with them? Okay, great.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it's on the principal's radar right now. I have a meeting with them next week to talk to you, like how to communicate and what we're going to do with those guys.
Okay, thank you.
Yep, good question.
That was just a presentation, so it didn't
Yeah.
need to be pulled anyway for any kind of action, so, right?
Yep, that's right.
Okay, if there's nothing else to pull out. Do you have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Or the items on the consent agenda?
So moved.
A second? I got it, okay. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carries. Next up, Section 5, Board Members Committee Reports, Alma Heights School Foundation. Bonnie?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
My little notes right here. They had a full, everybody but one person was at the meeting this week, so they were pretty excited about that. So the annual giving campaign is kicking off. They're going to get started. Their theme is Just Give, which is fun. On 9/11, they're going to have a gathering either September 11th or 12th, I think. And then Greater Heights Night, mark your calendars, is November 8th from 6 to 10:30, and their theme is investing in the future of our children. and they've got a large team of people working on that. But one of the things that they are working on this year that's a little different is they have a group working on what they're calling Friends and Family that are really trying to target alumni and just people that aren't necessarily going to maybe go to the party or wouldn't naturally get plugged into the foundation. So they're reaching out a little broader. If you have any interest in getting plugged in with that, let me know.
Trying to have some fourth generation families.
Yeah, we need some fourth generation families. They have 4 of their corporate partners signed up so far. So not everyone signed up, but that's a 3-year commitment and generating like $291,000. They're launching a new website. They're really focusing on getting their website to work well with the mobile devices. I guess I didn't really realize their last one didn't, but that's one of their big plugs. And then just to be work with all the social media and stuff like that. Heights Heroes presentations will be happening at the first PTO meetings. Remember how they give $500 to a peer-nominated teacher at each of the campuses? Grants to educators, those applications will be accepted through October. And just encourage, if you have a conversation with the teacher, encourage them to apply. They were telling all of us to encourage everybody to apply. Just as a report, total distributions to the district last year were $845,000, which that's better than they did the year before. So they're very excited about that. Yep, very exciting. And then y'all may remember the wellness program. They're not quite ready to call that a closed out endowed fund, fully endowed fund. So they've got somebody on board to continue to try to fundraise a little bit more to get that kind of to be fully endowed and being well, they made a push for it a while back, and they
thought 2 years
they
ago
got promises for it, but some of
okay.
those did not come through,
Okay.
and so now they're going to make another push.
So what's the
She was, she didn't have a hard number because your balance, your core fund can change, can lose value. But she said she'd like for it to have well over 200,000 more, like 2 to 250 more, and then they feel good about stop fundraising for that. So that's one of those things that there's certain people that really like to give to that fund. So that's another thing. Kelly Feldbaum's heading that up. So if y'all know somebody that's interested in that, I think that's it for the foundation.
Great. Thank you. That's great. Next up are Section 6 business recommendations. Mike, no recommendations. Okay. Section 7 superintendent's communication.
Yeah. So legislative update is going to be very short. I'm going to spend as much time on it as we got dollars.
We're done.
So the next part is summer work. I just wanted to update y'all, and I know y'all know so much of this, but also for the folks that are here and everything, but the summertime's a busy time. So I just jotted down a few things that happened over the summer. A lot of times people drive by schools and they think they're empty and people aren't working. Of course, our central office folks work all summer, except for we close the office for 4 days in July. But we had the Martha Spore Writing Camp. We had about 20 students there. That's a foundation-funded writing camp that kids go and spend a week becoming better writers. It's really a neat deal. We had Summer at Heights. We had 1,519 students participate in Summer at Heights. We had summer school, and we had 573 students attend summer school, about a little over half those at elementary, some at high school. I'm not including junior school numbers, so I may be a little low on that. We had Mules in Training, MIT. We had 373 students. Rocketry went to White Sands, New Mexico, and shot off their rocket and in slow motion, sort of. It was kind of an interesting launch, but it was a very exciting thing. We have done training for our new engaged classroom teachers, and they are very engaged, let me just say. So that's 61 new people that are doing that, and some of the 17 from last year joined in as well, and they just spoke so highly of it. Like really, I wish we had recorded it because they were just so over the top positive. But that also means new furniture in those 61 classrooms and new technology in those 61 classrooms, as well as the training that goes into it.
Was there any significant complaint from the teachers about the engaged classrooms? I mean, like significant, not like
Yeah.
I wish this were better or something like that, but just like,
Man,
I would say that the challenge, right, was you guys seen the 3.0 video that we showed?
yes.
Yeah.
So they felt like, so it was challenging because sometimes the kids aren't quite buying into 3.0 yet.
Right.
Yeah.
Or even some parent conversations about, now, tell me again, why the
Yeah.
3.0 thing?
Yeah,
So it's
Mr.
just, it's a challenge to work through, not like a complaint.
Not that the setup is difficult, but it's just implementation with changing a culture. Yeah.
Something new.
Kind of like, just tell me what's on the test so I can get the grade, as opposed
That's
to,
awesome.
I need to learn this, or I need to do this or work on the product. So like Mr. Tucker had said, 88% of his surveys were like, yes, we loved it, but 12% were like, I wish you'd just lecture and tell me what I needed to learn on the test.
And I want that wooden desk back.
Yeah, that's right.
What about the furniture? Did we hear, did we exclude anything through that?
The only thing, the main thing, and these guys can chime in, we did have these kind of dry erase magnet glass boards that we decided not to replicate. So that's one thing we got away from. There's 4 packages of furniture the teachers can go with. So the teachers really like those. What else? Other changes that we had?
The lighting, I think we discovered wasn't,
The lighting for the dollar amount, and so we're not doing the lighting in this bond.
Yeah.
It's just
By the
to-
end of the bond, it'll be affordable.
Yeah, that's probably true. But as you recall, in the 17 classrooms, they had LED lighting, and it auto-adjusted, and, if the sun came out, the light dimmed, if it went, it was that kind of thing, which is kind of neat, but it's just for the amount that you're paying for it. We felt like it wasn't necessarily to replicate yet.
Yep. Good value.
Anything else that y'all can think of? I think pretty much everything else was, they really liked. And the kids loved the furniture. We did a design camp. Our assistant soups and folks did a design camp with our academic deans. And for teachers to come in and redesign lessons and units of study and that kind of thing. And we had 24 people in that. We had a bunch of technology trainings. Sandra and her staff did several different kinds of trainings during the summer that are very popular. We started our 4th cohort of Teacher Leadership Academy. We had 35 people, 30 in there that started, which is great. That's a year-long deal, but they launched that. Had a 2-day language academy that Dr. Bashara helped orchestrate. We sent 2 people to Incubator EDU for our new entrepreneurship program that we hope to start next summer. And we got that going, and we're excited about it. And next month, we'll recognize that the Mays Family Foundation donated $25,000 towards that to pay our first 2 years fees on that, which is really great. We had an administrative planning summit. We did board and team building. We had budget meetings with you guys and GMP meetings and a lot of building meetings. We've been working on the design of the natatorium, roofing, we approved a roofing contractor, and are still in discussions about our central plant. We hired 61 staff, including 37 teachers, 1 principal, who, by the way, is doing an awesome job, and 1 academic dean, who's also doing an awesome job. And then we did all our deferred maintenance, which is, just every classroom and every campus and building in the district, and fields and, reseeding and watering and maintaining and all that good stuff. And we had a special session of the legislature, which was the only thing that didn't go well. Of all of those things, everything went well except that special session. So anyway, it was a busy summer, but it was a really productive one. And I just really want to highlight Mike and all of the plant services people who do all the deferred maintenance and all of those things. It's a huge lift. Sandra's done the technology training. Her staff, they go and re-image computers, and they
in the
collect
unair-conditioned schools.
Oh, that's right.
in unair-conditioned schools.
Wear your shorts.
A dresser, all sorts of things.
Frugal.
That's our weight loss plan over this.
All the updating the software and all those things. I mean, they are super busy in the summertime. Chris is super busy in the summertime with her staff, and getting ready for the year, and EYS and staffing is a big deal. She's one of our best recruiters. And Dana and Frank do so much in terms of the trainings that we have, and they also supervise hiring, and your principals are doing a ton. So there's a lot that those guys do to really get the work done. So
You
I
were
wanted
in
to
Colorado
just
this
let
summer,
them
right?
know. Yeah, I just, it's pretty sweet for me. Yeah, we got a lot done. And I also would say, I think it's the smoothest summer that we've had. We were on hiring in a big way, and we had a really great start to the year. So everybody made it home at the end of the first day, and there weren't too many tears at Howard. I went over and saw there were more moms than there were children, and everywhere else seemed to be going great. So, and all of us visited 400 classrooms on the first couple days of school, which is a fun thing to do and an exhausting thing to do, but it's really fun, and the sense of positivity and excitement about the year with the staff is really impressive. And I think a lot of that has to do with this is a great place to work, great place to be, and they're happy to have kids around again. School's a lot more fun when there's children around, so we're glad they showed up.
That's right.
You bet.
Okay, the next item on the agenda is citizens to be heard. This is the point where we allow citizens to provide input to the board. I'm not sure if we had anybody sign up, but if there's anybody who'd like to speak, we can invite you to the table. Sure, come on up.
Hi, I'm Tracy Hervey, and I am the liaison for the high school. So I love coming to these meetings anyway. Now I have a reason to tell Marcus that I will be home.
Hey, Tracy, just before you start, well, since we're not going to be completely strict on time here, but just the only thing I'd like to say is if you please refrain from using any of the names of employees or kids. I think that's just kind of a part of the board policy.
Oh, okay. I just have a question for my notes, actually.
Sure, okay.
So we approved, or you approved the handbook, not the code of conduct. Is that correct?
The other way around. We approved the code of conduct, not the handbook,
conduct?
right?
And
You did both, but you added into the handbook, correct?
Subject to the.
Can I make a recommendation real quick, just to keep the process right?
All right.
Questions are better served to the administrators after the board meeting's over.
got it. I'll sit down.
I appreciate it. We just.
We're not allowed to respond, yeah.
You can't respond
By
to
law, we can't.
Yes.
Yeah.
You know,
So it's
I'm
just like, I
sorry.
wanna help you
I was
back.
out of order. I was-
You're fine, Tracy. Thank you.
Okay, the next item we're going to be holding under executive session, so if there's no objections, I'd like to take a short 3-minute, what do you think, till 8:30? 3-minute break.
Calendar review, anything on the calendar?
No, we didn't
Oh, I'm
do
sorry,
calendar.
the calendar review.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, probably missed
I have
that.
a question about the calendar real quick.
Yes.
Is there any plan for the SAT testing on Saturday?
We're going to make a decision by noon tomorrow.
Okay.
We really don't want to cancel it.
Yeah.
And I'm having a meeting with all the Bexar County superintendents at 9 in the morning tomorrow. We try to have a unified message when in terms of school cancellation, that kind of thing. I'd really like to keep it because I know a lot of kids depend on that date, but I don't want to do it if it's going to run. I want to make, if it's unsafe.
Right.
I'd like to make the decision by noon, but if we make the decision that we're going to have it, I still may make a game time decision not to have it later, if that makes sense. I mean, if weather's so unpredictable, even though we know rain's coming, they can't really tell us how many inches, and that makes all the difference in the world.
Sure.
But we're trying not to cancel it. We have a couple other weekend events with volleyball tournament in Smithson Valley. They're currently been playing, and then we also have a cross country meet, and then we have a fundraiser for football and a moms meeting. No, fundraiser for volleyball and a football moms meeting. So those are things we're kind
The
of
other thing, I
having.
think Forrest Whitler's supposed to pitch tomorrow, right?
He was, yeah. It doesn't look good.
So on the 28th, is that for us, the Communication Council meeting?
Yeah, I saw that.
No, so
that's
just
not
as a
us.
reminder,
Okay.
Communications Council is, I have 2 staff from every campus that meets with
Okay.
me monthly, and they can ask any questions that they want and have dialogue. So we meet once a month after board meetings. Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I'll just highlight a couple things. Just August 30th is our high school athletic kickoff. barbecue at the stadium at 5 o'clock on the 30th.
What time is that, 5?
5 to 6:30. And then Saturday, September 9th is a Go Public Cook-Off at the Pearl. Culinary Institute of America will have a team, a culinary team. It'll be me and the teacher and possibly Perry and a student or two.
And we can't cook, right? Like, we're basically just eye candy? Is that what?
Well, no, I think we're helping, but mostly the kids.
Like,
and
hey,
the
give me
teacher
that
will
thing
do
of salt?
That's right, that's right. How can I help?
What time is it?
That one, the exact time was 10 to 1, I think. 10 to 1.
10 to 1?
Just a reminder, September 13th, it's a Wednesday, is GMP, Goals and Priorities meetings. Then your first learning walk of the year is Wednesday, September 27th, 11 to 1 at the high school. And then you have your board meeting is that the 28th or the 21st? 21st, okay. Yep. That's it.
Okay, we'll take we'll reconvene at 8:35 under executive session as per Texas Government Code, section 551.001.